Hello, and welcome to the Emmanuel Presbyterian study of the book of Ruth. We've made it to chapter 3. I'll start here where all the action is beginning to take place, and I'll read really mostly the entire chapter of the chapter 3. It's quite short, as you've noticed. The book of Ruth itself is just a few pages long. Hear these words from the 3rd chapter of Ruth. One day, Ruth's mother-in-law, Naomi, said to her, "My daughter, I must find a home for you where you'll be well provided for. Now, Boaz, with whose women you have worked, is a relative of ours. Tonight he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. Wash, put on perfume, get dressed in your best clothes. Then go down to the threshing floor. But don't let him know you're there until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, note the place where he is lying. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what to do." "I'll do whatever you say," Ruth answered. So she went down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law told her to do. When Boaz had finished eating and drinking and was in good spirits, he went over to lie down at the far end of the grain pile. Ruth approached quietly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. In the middle of the night, something startled Boaz. He turned, and there was a woman laying at his feet. "Who are you?" he asked. "Oh, I am your servant, Ruth," she said. "Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a guardian redeemer of my family." "The Lord bless you, my daughter," Boaz replied. "This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. You have not run after the young men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all you ask. And the people of my town know that you are a woman of noble character. Although it is true that I am a guardian redeemer of your family, there is another who is more closely related than I. Stay here for the night, and in the morning, if he wants to do his duty as a guardian redeemer, good. Let him redeem you. But if he's not willing, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. Lie here until morning." He also said, "Bring me the shawl that you are wearing and hold it out." And when he did so, he poured it into 6 measures of barley and placed the bundle on her, and then went back into town. When Ruth came to her mother-in-law, Naomi asked, "How did it go, my daughter?" And Ruth told her everything Boaz had done for her, and added, "And he gave me these 6 measures of barley, saying, 'Don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed.'" Then Naomi said, "Wait, my daughter, until you find out what happens. For the man will not rest until the matter is settled today." This is the word of the Lord. So Naomi seems to have come out of her fog of mourning and has an idea. Boaz, whose field Ruth has been gleaning in, Boaz is their relative. So she tells Ruth what to do. He's going to be winnowing barley. He'll be drinking. So, get freshened up, put on your perfume and your nicest clothes, and go to the threshing floor. And, well, you heard the account. It sounds like it could be racy to our modern ears. And I have to tell you, in the original Hebrew, it sounds potentially racy, just in all the various translations. There's that possibility. Now, here's what's interesting. Scholars disagree on just how racy that this part of the story is. You know, the whole scene on the threshing floor and what Naomi had in mind and what it is that Boaz did for Ruth that night, and why he says, "Oh, you haven't run after the young men, so you're good, and so come here, I'll spread my coat over you." You know, scholars disagree on how dangerous or daring or manipulative or possibly inappropriate it might have been. There are papers and chapters and perhaps, I don't know about books, but perhaps even books written to convince readers one way or another, either the innocence of this situation or the raciness and earthiness of this plan that's devised by Naomi and enacted by Ruth. Here's the fact. The fact remains that there are questions. And they're not dumb questions either way. On both sides of this of the reasoning, they're very legitimate, thoughtful perspectives. That is a hallmark of a very dense, layered, very effectively written story. The famous romantic writer Goethe called the Book of Ruth the most charming little whole. It is a masterpiece of ancient Israelite narrative. There is significant insinuating going on, no matter how you look at it. Whether the tone reflects what actually happened, or the desire of the writer to be suggestive, or if it simply reflects what a reader, you know, has in his or her heart that they hear. You know, we cannot say, but those are all very rich questions and possibilities. We're led to ask questions. That is one of Ruth's gifts to us. We are called to engage the story and to think about the range of life that is addressed by the Bible, by our holy word. The writing of this story is actually attributed to Samuel. If so, we know that Samuel understood. He understood what it was to tell a story about how scary it can be just to live in a body, right? You know, they surprise us. Things happen to them. We don't always know how to fix them. They constantly need food and upkeep, and, you know, that involves some measure of getting those things. He knew how scary it was to live in a time of chaos when people didn't go by rules, commonly held rules that benefited all. To live in a time of famine, how scary that was. And to persist in being imaginative and faithful, and to try to find a life, just to try to be a decent human being. Samuel understood all of those elements, and they're here in the book of Ruth. What is Naomi getting Ruth into when she devises this plan? Does she really love Naomi? I mean, does she really love Ruth? Does she really have Ruth's best interest at heart? Is the story risque? Can God work through these kinds of earthy human features and needs? Does God get all of these aspects of our human existence? Maybe Naomi gave up on God and decided just to take matters into her own hands. Or maybe she's divinely inspired with this plan from God. The questions we have for Naomi are the same questions that we may ask ourselves. Is this God's inspiration in me? Or am I just pushing a plan because I'm scared and I want to survive? They're good questions that this entire book of Ruth, but particularly this third chapter of Ruth, has us ask. Let's pause for a moment and just think about those questions. So we, as just people who read the Bible, who've heard this story many times, can gloss over asking important, interesting questions. We might sugarcoat the whole story and just tell it like a love story that was just always meant to be. A love story of a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law, or eventually a love story between Ruth and Boaz. We know the story so well that, we may forget to feel the despondency of Naomi and Ruth. We may not connect to the struggle of only eating barley for days and even being grateful for that. We may not be able to relate to the grief of losing spouse and children and having no way to pay for housing or food. We may not be able to relate to the level at which Ruth and Naomi felt like a nobody, being something akin to a parcel of land or any other belonging. Most of us do not know what it would feel like to have to leave our country because there was no way to feed our family. Being so desperate to make a living that we'd go live in a land with people that our own people considered dirty enemies. Even if we slow down to take into account all Naomi has been through, there are questions about Ruth that we may not fully embrace if we just think of, if we put this in the category of holy and we don't let this text really sink into the human experience. Does Ruth feel used? Is she naive? Or does she know full well what risk she's taking? And then there's Boaz. He doesn't even remember who Ruth is when he wakes up in the middle of the night to find someone sleeping there. What does that mean about him? Doesn't mean anything. He seems to be a man trying to live well and do the right thing in a time when the culture at large holds no one accountable, if we're to believe the book of Judges. So what must it be like to try to find his way as a man with power and influence and not abuse that position when no one cares whether you're a good man or not? What is life like for someone like Boaz? This book is one of the few books of the Bible featuring women. It is a story of ingenuity and persistence. It's a story for any woman who has ever felt vulnerable, disposable, powerless, invisible. It's a story for anyone or any group who has ever felt that way, man or woman. In a canon like our Bible that speaks overtly of, to, and from men, the book of Ruth is an important revelation of the lives of women in that ancient time. What would it be like if more stories featuring the lives and ingenuity of women had survived and been included in the current canon of the Bible? But Ruth is not just a book for women. The book speaks to men. Maybe more importantly, it speaks to men, asking them, what does it look like for a man to try to find his way when society literally encourages him to be toxic? What does it take for a man to take the high road in a time such as this? So let's return to the storyline for our last section. Ruth tells Boaz that she knows he's a relative of her deceased father in law and that he could be a goel. That's the word in Hebrew, goel, kinsman redeemer. A goel for her and for Naomi. And Boaz says, "Yeah, I could do that, but there's somebody who's related a little bit more closely to you, and I'm the kind of guy that follows the rules, so we've got to check in with him first." And so he tells her to just stay there for the night. Um, and now again, that's one of those places where there's a debate about what that means. And maybe we're supposed to debate, what happens there on the threshing floor when Boaz tells her to stay the night. Maybe the details about Naomi and Ruth and Boaz have not just been lost over the ages. Maybe this story was always meant to make us think and argue and wonder. Maybe some of our best thought and practices come out of not knowing for sure, but finding our way forward through argument, through differing opinion, through wondering. Because maybe if things are too cut and dried, maybe we become like little gods, thinking that we have the power of right and wrong, the knowledge of good and evil. Maybe that is just the kind of self-assuredness that eats away at our faith, at our trust, at the deep truth that we need God. We need God because we don't have all the answers. And because life is a process. Life is a process. Being faithful is a process, and being a Christian is a process. When asked if she held religious beliefs, Maya Angelou responded, yes. Yes, I was baptized as a child. So that means I am becoming a Christian. I love the way she phrases that. I was baptized as a child, so I am becoming a Christian. God is one God who made many individuals, and each of us with so many needs and strengths and weaknesses and gifts. One God who created an entire world of diverse creatures and beings, and so much strangeness and pain and beauty in the world. One God holding it all. That is a big God. If we believe in one creator, then there's nothing outside of God. Not even the worst evil that we can imagine is outside of the one God. But we can get awfully scared. We can get awfully scared, awfully hurt, awfully hungry, awfully lonely. Like in the time of Judges and in the setting of Ruth, when the culture seems set up to cut people down, or when famine comes, or tragedy strikes, or when a pandemic hits. It pretty much takes a whole life to be a Christian, not holding anything back, asking questions, letting differences and disagreements be part of how we grow and learn in God, and how we learn to trust God and act and be in God, and come to accept the mystery that God created us all. It has been said that you don't change by looking in a mirror, that you change by encountering differences and then looking in a mirror. So, referencing yourself, interacting with other people, referencing yourself, interacting with other people, not one or the other, but both. Introspection and interaction. As Christians, as people committed to becoming Christians, we reference the body of the living Word also. We reference the example of Jesus Christ. We reference the book of Ruth. We reference one another and the guidance of the Holy Spirit. These become our guiding values as we reference others and look back to ourselves. So the word of another person doesn't become power over us, and our word doesn't become power over another person. But we learn to live the word of one God, even in all of our differences, even in strange and difficult times. We learn to live in God's unity, despite struggles, despite differences. That brings this video for the book of Ruth, chapter 3, to an end. I have loved talking with you about this wonderful story, and we have one more chapter to go. So I'll see you next time for the fourth and final chapter of the book of Ruth.